We hear a lot of perspectives on the Mankind podcast. Inclusion of a guest is not an endorsement of their views, and the opinions expressed here do not always represent the mission or values of the Mankind Project USA.
Looks like the rain has
Hey, everybody, it's Boysen Hodgson. Welcome back to the Mankind Podcast, the podcast where we are constantly complicating issues of masculinity and setting out to prove that there is indeed more than one way to be a man. This afternoon on this hot June day, I am sitting with David Jurasek, who I met not through MKP, though he is an MKP dude, through a men's retreat that I did in Boston. Shouts to Ken Mossman and to Sean Harvey and to Jason Frischman and to all the men that were present for that weekend. And this dude, David, zoomed in because he had COVID while we were on this men's retreat. So he zoomed in for 2 full days and just hung out with us to the extent that he had energy to do that. Say hello, David.
Hi, everybody. That was really powerful for me, the way you guys brought me in. I felt like I so missed out on this powerful experience, and being able to be there with you, even in my condition, was a real highlight for me of the start of the year.
And it was you were a contribution. You were a gift to that container and bringing your wisdom. So I got to see David's wisdom from afar, and now we're getting to know each other a little bit better. David wears many hats and has one mission right now as a father, husband, therapist, sensei, theater director, writer, actor, singer, community leader, with 25 years of experience helping boys and men become both powerful and loving. Today, he has a mission to bring men and women together to heal and grow more powerful and loving relationships. That is a pretty profound mission.
Yikes. Might take many lifetimes.
It may take many lives. And that's the intent, right? That's what we're supposed to do with our missions. Yeah. Big, hairy, audacious goals to chase after. So I want to start by, you've got 25 years. You're younger than me. You started leading groups. And as we were setting up for this conversation, you said something that was like, when I came into men's work, there was the Mankind Project and there was Sterling. And now, so just point outside, and what do you see happening in men's work out there?
Ooh, it's I'll have to draw parallels because it's exciting. There used to be just I think when you said men's work 20, 25 years ago, people looked at you sideways. You know, they thought of this like, there's a Kids in the Hall skit where there's like a corporate guy who goes in the woods and gets naked and, you know, bangs on a drum. People would make fun of it. People thought it was a cult. They thought it was some weird shit. And what's really transformed, I think, since Me Too and around that time is there's just been a mushrooming, which I think is tremendous, of hundreds, I'd say more than probably 1,000 different kinds of men's groups. And they're kind of inspired, some of them, from each other. There's a lot of them that are inspired by MKP. I started a men's group 7 years ago that took off from the work I was doing in MKP. And I see a lot of goodness in that. I also see, and I found this in the mental health world when we started to integrate mindfulness or the body.
Yeah.
It's exciting because it used to be woo-woo, don't bring that shit in here, to like now everyone's doing it. And now you get like 20-year-olds who had a weekend and they're starting their own thing, and they're kind of putting themselves into a guru position.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what age you're at when you enter the work. But I think as a leader who's been in it for a while, I see people who are doing exciting things and then burning out.
Mm-hmm.
who are trying to be sexy on Instagram with men's work, which is
Mhm.
good because it gets new people and new guys interested in men's work. But I'm more gravitating towards the long, deep growth. Those of us who, whatever age we're at, we know in our bones we're in this for the long haul, and it's not just a business kind of project or an inspiration I had on a weekend. It's something that I have to do. It's part of my life, right? And it's a response to all the things that are going on in the world that I don't like.
Yeah.
I'm building healthier soil right here. That kind of approach. So there are a lot of really wonderful men doing that work also.
Yeah.
And I see all kinds, it's a very diverse ecosystem right now.
Yeah. Growing diversity in the ecosystem right now. And I'm kind of blown away and grateful and excited to see some of the energy that's happening in uh, in communities that haven't had this kind of work. Like there are more communities of BIPOC men that are growing up and really grounding themselves into the work. There are Latino men who are now coming into this work as like there's all kinds of flavors and all kinds of cultures and all kinds of influences that are kind of growing, which I think is really cool. And it's an opportunity for, a fair amount of Dunning-Kruger effect out there in the world also, where I had a spiritual awakening on a Saturday night, and therefore now I'm an expert in masculinity on some level, right? That's also happening out there.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of way all trends go, right? It goes from being something out there, weird, and then it becomes popularized. It goes through that stage. What I'm really excited to dive into with you, Boysen, is I think of there's shadows to everything, right? And in men's work, sometimes I've found there's a shadow to how we relate to the feminine, how we relate to our, not just the great feminine, but to our wives, to our daughters, to our moms, our sisters. And that's the part that right now fascinates me. I'm in a lot of working groups with men and women. And the polarization right now between genders is so fucked up. It's so intense. You can get villainized on social media just for speaking to both sides. If you're not adequately, for one side against another side, you're a traitor. And so there's a bunch of us who are leaders in the men's work and the women's work, trying to heal that rift, you know? And it's edgy work.
Yeah. So let's start from the kind of pitfalls place in that. So what are some common ways that you see, and perhaps we can start from a men's work angle. What are some common things that you see guys in men's work doing that avoids that work or that does put it into shadow? What are some pitfalls that we hit?
Yeah. It took me maybe 7 or 8 years to actually see this clearly myself. When I got into MKP, I was a mess, and I had a lot of issues with my dad and with masculinity and manhood. And so, So when I got involved in MKP, it was a lifesaver. I was suicidal. I was burnt out as a therapist. I needed men's work. I was writing a paper, my master's thesis about men's work, but I needed it. And Mankind Project gave me the scaffold, the structure to understand personal accountability in a way that therapy didn't. Therapy was great for listening, empathy. I had I had at one point 3 therapists, 3 times a week. Got a lot of reflection, but I didn't learn about integrity and personal accountability and taking responsibility for my life as deeply and concretely as I did through MKP, right?
Yeah.
But it took me about 7 years to realize, well, sometimes I go even to my MKP circle or there'd be some seasoned men, and I'd bring up issues with my wife or with my mom. And we knew enough not to try to give each other advice or fix each other. but the default can sometimes be to go back to just personal responsibility. Okay, what's going on for you? How are you feeling? Okay, clear that, take care of that. Okay, good, you're good. And then on the side, so there's two things are going on. Sometimes in the male culture, we rest too heavily on personal accountability, and we're missing what I call relational accountability.
Nice. How do you define that?
Yeah. Well, I'll get to that in a sec.
Okay.
The other thing that would happen is in the circle, the guys would be like personal accountability. Let's clear. Let's I statements. Keep it clean and all that. Beautiful.
Yeah.
But I would still be like, okay, but what about my wife? What about what's going on between us? Like, how do I deal with that? And I'm a therapist. I'm supposed to know that too. And I can help other people with it. But when it's in my own face, I can't see it. Intimacy is like that. It's too close.
Yeah.
But what was also going on in parallel is these guys in circle would come to me privately, and then we get into the whole, oh man, I so relate to that. Me and my wife. Oh my God. And there would be a lot of projecting on each other.
Yeah.
Oh, I know you're going through, man. I know what you're going through. And there would be a lot of this, like our wounds were similar, that we would assume things about each other. Right. And there would be this subtle kind of, yeah, you just got to give her space, or yeah, you just got to do this. And it didn't really help. And it didn't help for me even to be trained as a therapist, working with families and couples, because my own stuff was just right in my face. So it took me a few years to like set up circles where we were able to share in a way where we could see relational accountability. To me, that's about understanding what's my stuff, what's your stuff, and how do we interact, and how does it play out? And so what do I actually take responsibility for in the interaction? Not just my own stuff, but in how I'm impacting my partner or my daughter or my mom. I think it's with men and men too, but the relational accountability took me a long time to get it, especially in relationship with my mom. She was such an instrumental force in our lives, our mothers, right? Yeah. And there's to me, there's three layers. My wife and I go through this dance. We just had a little fight a couple of days ago. And we've gotten so good at it, but it used to like really drive us crazy to the point where we're like, I don't know if I can tolerate you. Because when we get triggered, we don't see our partner clearly. We don't see ourselves clearly, and we don't see the relationship clearly.
Yeah.
And if their only tool is personal accountability, we only have one piece of that puzzle. It's not enough. So one of the things that I started to understand, and I had to have a lot of support in how I showed up in my marriage, in my relationships, to actually start to see it, is I needed to, whenever there's a rupture, I needed to take ownership over three parts. The first part is my behavior. That's obvious, right? Okay, I'm starting to shout, or okay, I'm starting to turn away. Yeah, okay, I do that. I'm rolling my eyes. Fuck, I did that.
Did it again. Yep.
Oh, okay. The second part is taking ownership over my impact.
Yeah.
Okay, that part is trickier. Like, how many times did I say, okay, honey, you're upset. I'm sorry that you feel upset. I'm sorry that you've got these issues.
Yes.
No, that's not taking ownership over my impact.
Yes.
I mean, I think taking ownership over impact is such a profound step, because it's actually owning my full power. I have the power to heal you. I have the power to hurt you.
Wow.
To wound you. Doesn't matter if I intend it or don't intend it.
Yep.
Intentions are secondary. My impact on you is primary, right? But this is where it gets really confusing, because let's say you're extremely triggered and wounded, and I'm not intending to wound you. I'm well aware of your wound, and I'm even trying to walk on eggshells sometimes around it. And no matter what I do, I'm going to trigger you.
Yep.
How much of that is really my own, right? And this third part is the part that helps to tease that out. Once I started to be able to track wounds that we have. So I have very embodied ways to track wounds. So it's not heady, because you can get really heady with this. You can go to therapy for 20 years and talk about it and still not do anything about it. But once you can identify on a body level what your wound is. So for me, one of my wounds is the status wound, you know. I feel superior to women because that's what my dad did. He comes from a culture where you look down on women. And I hate my dad for that, but I still adopted that
Yeah.
from him.
Yeah.
And there are other times where I feel inferior to women, where my mom is a very powerful force, and she taught me to be afraid of her and to be afraid of her approval and disapproval.
Yes.
Like women can really shame men in a way that's profound, right?
Yes.
So I can go up and down easily. And I get easily overwhelmed with intense emotional women. So I go into like pulling back and I need space. It's very characteristic of most of us as men, right? So I fear being suffocated by the needs of women. And I feel guilty if I'm not giving them what they want. So these are, once I get clear about how that's being triggered physically, physiologically, and I own my wound, it's a kind of a dangerous thing at first, right? Because if I own it, then I can't blame them.
Yes.
But I also, if I own it to my wife, she can use it against me. She can say, every time I'm upset, say, well, that's your wound. Oh, and we've done that to each other when we're most, I mean, when people fight in intimacy, the knives come out, right?
Yes.
We can all get nasty with each other, but that's the risk. The benefit of owning our wound is then once we're tending that wound, then everything else that isn't that, we can say, oh, that's not mine. Oh, yeah, I did roll my eyes. I did have a moment where I felt superior and I wanted to say, fuck this shit, I'm out of here. I did that. Yeah, that's mine. I know where that comes from and I'm taking care of that and I'm coming back into relationship. But that other thing, honey, that you said, oh, no, that does not belong. That's not mine.
Yeah.
That's not for me to take on. That's not for me to get confused about. I can see the line clearly now, right? That took me so long to figure that out. It took so much practical going back and forth and getting clarity and feedback. But once we are able to do that, then we're able to be in conflict. And I have a martial arts background. Then it's kind of fun because it's like
dance. Yeah.
When you're on, when you're on the mats, even when you bring fake weapons or real weapons, it's kind of like, okay, I know you know how to really wound me. You know where my weak spots are and you're going for them. But I know that too. So now we can play with that a little bit, right? And it's like, oh, and you're this is fun, and now it's not fun. Now you're actually being mean. Now you're playing out some shit with your dad on me, and that's not okay. That needs to stop. So there's ability to kind of understand relational accountability to each other, and ultimately the goal is to be in relationship.
Yes,
it's not just for David to be in integrity with David. It's for David to be in integrity with the relationship with his wife, with his daughter, with his mom. I think that's the part that once we bring that consciousness into our men's work, then I think we can go into it in such a way that when we come home to our partner, they can feel the difference. There's something like you went to your circle, you were mad at me and I was mad at you. And now there's something, you're softer, you're more present. You didn't just blow off steam about something else and feel, lighter, but you feel you're showing up differently. Feeling you different.
Yes.
Looks
That's
like
the thing that
when
that started to happen, when a lot of women in our community started telling each other there's something going on with our men and we like it, they even started getting jealous and said, we need some of that. And they started their own women's community because they were like, what are they doing? There's something actually very seductive about that, right?
Yes.
When you're used to being with your,
yes,
it's attractive. Yeah. And when you're used to being with your partner and the dance, it gets kind of calcified. Oh, we're going there again. We're having that stupid fight. And then they go away or over time, they just start doing the dance differently and it feels a little better. It's not perfect. It's not all resolved, but it starts to feel a little more playful, a little more easier, less stakes, right?
No.
you're like, damn, what's that guy? What's he doing? I want some of that.
Yeah.
And that's a sign of a healthy relationship, right? Is you're growing, you're evolving together. You're still going to have fights. You're still going to get on each other's nerves, but you can see that there's a trajectory
Yeah.
that's taking you somewhere better. Yeah.
So much juicy stuff in there. So I'm going to scroll all the way back to MKP and accountability, right? Like there's here's secret stuff. Friday night there's accountability on the New Warrior training adventure, right? And one of the pieces of accountability that we say clearly repeatedly over and over and over is like being accountable means that you're taking responsibility for the impacts intended and unintended, the consequences intended and unintended of your behaviors, right? So it's easy to get that and then leave it, right? Or have men who get together and practice these things with one another, but then it kind of goes out the window when we go back into our intimate relationships.
And Boysen, I'd say there's also a way where we can use any tool like a scalpel. It can be used for healing. It can also be actually harmful.
Yes.
I've seen so many couples turn on each other with like that whole accountability thing. You're not owning your stuff. I am owning my stuff. You're not owning your stuff. And it's like, well, I'm owning this. Well, I'm owning that. And it's like you can actually use that
yes,
to like cut each other, right?
Yes.
And I've seen when a man is conscious enough in men's work, he'll have the compassion to know I'm holding you accountable to your impact on me, but I'm also like not going to twist your balls and try to shame you and guilt you.
Right.
There's a subtle little way of doing it.
Right.
So this is, to me, it's fascinating because when it comes down to it, when I worked with boys, they were always coming to me because they got in trouble. I was a boy whisperer therapist. Fix my boy. He's getting in trouble. The teacher doesn't want him. He can't even do the therapy group that we signed him up for. And I got to do martial arts therapy with boys.
Nice.
Which is super fun, right? Because you get to wrestle and
embodied.
They liked it.
Yes.
Yeah. It's embodied. They buy in. They feel powerful. But we had to teach them about accountability. And for most of us, accountability means you got in trouble and you got a big fat lecture and then you felt shitty and you were punished.
Shamed, yes. Or
we were told, okay, I don't know who started what, but you need to apologize. And forcing an apology is so coercive, right? It's like you don't have really a choice.
Yeah.
You can get the big fat lecture and the punishment, or you can roll your eyes and apologize. But it's meaningless, or worse than meaningless, it's coercive.
Right.
We don't actually see adults apologize when we're growing up. It took me till I was in my 20s, till I was in MKP, where I saw a man like really repair with another man.
Yep.
I had never heard an adult male apologize for anything in my life. Right?
Yep.
So we don't understand repair. I'd say repair is the most important skill there is, because we're gonna hurt each other. If we get close enough, long enough, even if we're just roommates, we're gonna hurt each other in some way. We're gonna disappoint each other. We're gonna, we're not gonna live up to some ideal that we have of one another. And to me, that's where that comes in. It's not about apologizing. It's about ownership.
Ownership is the key.
Behavior, yes. Impact. Yep. But then there's that wounding piece, because even the impact can get confusing, right? Well, you did this or you didn't do this. The impact is this. Own it, man. Own it. And then you own it, but you're like, wait a second. I'm owning some of this because it's not all mine.
Yeah.
You tend to take things personally and misinterpret cues. And so it can't all be mine, right? That's kind of skewed. We're also, and I'm going to say something controversial. We're at a time right now where I'm hearing the public conversation, between men and women, and it's a lot about men need to take ownership. Men need to own our, how we are with women, right? Our history with women, patriarchy, toxic masculinity. And I agree with all of that. And I also feel like there isn't a conversation about how women need to take ownership,
Mm.
because women can be very wounding to their partners in relationship too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the edge of our societal consciousness. We're not willing to go there yet. And if somebody mentions that, they get a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
But it's a mutual accountability. It's a mutual ownership, mutual repair. I own my stuff. You own your stuff. We lick our wounds. We help each other to lick each other's wounds. Um, but we're both in there, cutting each other up.
I want to talk about consent and
Mm,
agreement, because this is
mm,
like the key that I
mm.
experience in my marriage and my relationship. My wife and I will be 19 years in August.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And we started with shadow work. We got together in October. I
Yeah.
did my new warrior training adventure in April. And
Mm-hmm.
then Kendra did Women in Power in June of the same year. So a shadow work weekend, right? All
Wow.
about the predator archetype, Women in Power. So
Mm.
I went and did my work, did an incredible piece of mother work in my primary integration training like 2 weeks later, and like I had all this stuff. So we've had this shadow work as an informing our relationship since the very beginning.
Wow.
But honest, in the last year, we have made strides in actually being able to do this stuff. I have made incredible strides in
Mm.
being able to do this stuff real time
Mm.
with Kendra.
Yeah.
And the key has been consent and mutual agreement.
Yeah.
Like the two of us came to some recognitions about ourselves, and I'll own mine, right? I came to that recognition, and boy, the significance wound that you pointed out, right? That huge for me, the beliefs that I took on from my father about relationship to women and power over, and being literally patronizing,
Yeah.
right? Condescending, arrogant, that eye rolling kind of behavior, right? That
Mm-hmm.
was just so deep built into me. And then similar
Yeah.
stuff, fear of my mother. So I came to Kendra and I said, listen, when I'm doing this and I recognize that I do it, I'm trying to run away from our relationship.
Mm.
I don't want to do that anymore.
Mm.
I don't want to run away anymore. I want to be in the intimacy. I want to be in the hard stuff, right? So
Mm.
when I'm condescending and patronizing and rolling my eyes and doing all of this stuff, that is me being unwilling to confront the wound, right? Me being unwilling to work on my own wound. I want to be accountable for that. Will you
Yeah.
help me? And
Yeah.
because of the depth of our
Wow.
relationship, what got to come forward was Kendra then got to say, yes, I will. And you know what? I know that I shame you. I know that I wound you from my own, like, I have to do it myself. I'm always going to be on my own father wound, my own stuff. When I'm doing that, I'm running away from our relationship, and I don't want to do that anymore.
Wow.
So we've had this time where, like, I mean, it happened yesterday. We had a thing happen. I had told Kendra I would do something. I didn't follow through. I didn't do it.
Mm.
It created an impact that was like really anxious and stressful and da 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 da, and like
Mm-hmm.
impacted our stuff. And I stood in the accountability for the behavior was I didn't do it. The impact was that it caused all of this stress.
Mm.
Kendra was amped up. I didn't try to defend. I didn't try and make it excuse it. I didn't try and make it about something else. I just stood with
Yeah.
the impact of the behavior.
Yeah.
And then 40 minutes later, we moved on and we did what we had to do, and da da da. And 40 minutes later, Kendra came down into the kitchen, and I was in the kitchen. And she said, I want to own how angry I got and that I raised my voice. And I know that that had an impact on you, and that wasn't what I intended. And it's
Mm.
like all of that can happen in an hour. and then we
Wow.
return to intimacy.
Yeah. And I imagine all that drama that could have happened dissipates, and you don't only return to intimacy, but I think we get a little closer each time.
Yeah.
A little deeper each time.
Yeah.
I think that's the part that's intoxicating, right?
Safer.
It's like, wow.
I can
Safer.
I
Yeah.
can be safer
Yeah.
every time in that deepening. And that's so cool. And
Yeah.
but yeah, this behavior impact and wounds, relational accountability and taking responsibility, because that's like at the heart of it is I have to own my own wounding in the moment so that I don't fly off the handle into my defensiveness and I'm going to push it onto you and I'm going to start gaslighting you into about your reactivity or whatever it is that I'm going to do. Right.
Yeah.
But we don't yet back to the macro level. So that's a very micro level. And I can create that kind of relationship with my kids and in my family and in a small group, maybe start to expand that. But at the macro level, I don't think that all of our communities have gotten to the point where men are willing to say, yes, I'm going to take responsibility for this. I'm going to look at the ways that I hurt women. I'm going to look at the ways that I hurt community, look at the ways I hurt myself. I hurt other men. And will you do the same? Can we invite you collectively to do this work with us, knowing that we're going to fuck it up?
Mm-hmm. That's the cutting edge for me, as men and women working together in that field of, and I see that that's not happening even in the therapy world. There's a lot of there's a lot of therapists dumping on men. It's just really easy, right? And then there's a backlash of men, even men who are very thoughtful, empathic, progressives, getting really angry about the whole toxic masculinity thing. And then they don't take in the message of accountability. They get just defensive. And so there's a lost opportunity, but there is an opportunity. I have one story example that just came to mind when you were talking about you and your wife. It's so powerful. And it parallels my journey of where my wife and I have gotten to. And it's a very different marriage than when we started. So it gives me a lot of hope. But I remember there was a kid that I worked with. He was 12 years old and he was like the biggest people pleaser. He couldn't stop smiling. He was so anxious. Really great kid. Nobody liked him. He was a teacher's pet. He tried too hard, and he was just so anxious. Like he was just going to have a heart attack. And he was 12 when he started working with me and another man, older man who's generative, running a dojo, Paul Badali. And it was really powerful because over 10 years, this kid went from being such a scared little boy to he grew to be like 6'5", muscular. And then he ended up teaching some of the classes. And I remember one time when I was finishing up the work, I walked in to watch his class, right? And he had these prickly teenagers, and he said, "Let's do some push-ups." And they were like, I don't want to do push-ups." And then one of them said, "Well, we did push-ups earlier." And he's like, "Did we really?" And he's like, "Yeah, we did." And he's like, "My bad. It's good. Let's keep going." And then he kept getting called out when he directed them. He kept directing them, and he kept getting called out. And his response was, "Oh, is that true? Okay, my bad. No worries. Let's move on." I was like, I couldn't do that in my 20s. I didn't have that confidence to say, yeah, I'm wrong. Okay, cool. No problem. Let's pivot. Like I was so proud of like as a young man that he had the confidence to be able to acknowledge when he's wrong, but also the confidence to direct and say, this is what I want to see. This is where I want to go. Oh, you don't like that? Doesn't feel good? Okay, no worries. Let's try this. Like that took me 45 plus years to get to that place.
Right.
So if the 12-year-old can get there in 10 years into a 22-year-old, that gives me enormous hope of if we nurture each other, if we give each other quality feedback, if we repair with each other, we can get there even sooner, in our world, right? And it can be in our school system. It can be anywhere, right? It just takes the courage of a father to say, you know what? I didn't realize that how I'm talking to you is harmful or it's scaring you. I feel terrible. And I acknowledge that. And I'm going to look at that, where that comes from, where I turn into a bully, or I turn into an absent father, where I get depressing, or where I become clingy and coercive as a parent. There's so many ways that we can enter into that ownership and just give that gift, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the best gift we can give to our kids, is to take ownership.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
can relax and go, okay, dad's not perfect. He's going to mess up, but look, he's getting better. And if he's getting better and if he can own his shit, I can do the same.
In a way, yes. In a way that we are not setting ourselves up and setting others up on a self-loathing path, right? On a shame path.
Mm-hmm.
That there's such a distinction that, the whole call out culture, cancel culture kind of stuff that I see going on. My kids are 20 and almost 18, right? So
Yeah.
I've watched them grow up within this culture of so-and-so said something, they're canceled kind of culture.
Yeah.
Which is exactly the opposite of what we want. Mm-hmm. Because when we create these cultures of accountability, it's like, oh yeah, wow, hey, I just said a sexist thing. Oh yeah, hey, there it is again. There's my homophobia showing up. Oh, hey, there it is again. There's the ways that I bully, the ways that I try and manipulate people, the ways that I try and dominate conversations, the ways that I try and do all of these things. And you know what? I'm still a lovable, good, worthy person who deserves to be in community.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a gift to all of us and to all of our kids if we can make space for that, for owning all of our flaws.
Yeah.
That are just human, that are just us. It's just us.
Yeah. I think what you're speaking to, this took me a long time to figure out, because I think we can enter talking about shame, right?
Yeah.
We've all experienced being shamed. It feels so shitty. I'm so inadequate, poor, bad me. But there's the grandiosity, that toxic high. It's like cocaine on the brain that our parents and our culture can feed us. You're special. You're better than.
Good. Yeah.
It's them that are bad, right? It's you're okay. You don't have to worry. The teacher's wrong. You're really good. You don't have to worry about being held accountable because you're above the fray, because you're unique, because you're gifted, because you're, and like how intoxicating that is for us as children, right? And how distorting that is when we actually in real relationship. I mean, I know people who have thrived on that cocaine, like have succeeded in business and have coasted on a lot of bullshit in their life, bluffing their way in up the ladder. But when they're with their wife and their kids, it's a horror show, right?
Yeah.
These kids don't want to be around that father as they grow up, and their partners are often looking for a way out. So can we find ways to help that man to come off that pedestal and not dread that he's going to get destroyed?
Right.
Because this was just a thing that he took on growing up, a way of coping. Can we make it safe enough to fuck up, to play those games, but then to learn to be in relationship?
Right.
Yeah.
And on the same token, so that was kind of like the male side of that equation. On the same token, like, can we make it safe enough together for women to be comfortable in vulnerability and softness, and for all of us, like my men's work has been about learning how I can actually feel safe in vulnerability.
Yeah.
How I can, let my teen kids see me cry.
Yeah.
And give a sincere repair with I fucked up. That's on me. I hurt you.
Yeah.
It's profound. It's powerful.
It is. It is. And it's such a paradox because on the outside, it's terrifying. On the inside, it's safer.
Yes.
It's like being on the outside of a hurricane or storm and being in the eye of it. I think of in Aikido, the martial art, when you watch it, you're like, oh, I'm going to break my neck if I go onto that mat. You're going to throw me in the air and flip me around. And I've done something much simpler and I injured myself. No freaking way. Right. And when I started training in it, I had a lot of fear around losing control over my body. Someone takes me and flips me, manipulates my body, chokes me out. And the more I was afraid of it and resistant to it, the more I got injured. The more I relaxed into it and entered into it willingly, that consent, right? The more I start to feel my power and my vigor and aliveness and safety, that feeling of I'm okay, I'm in good hands. I have my power, there's their power. We can work together in partnership to do things with our bodies we never imagined we could do, and we could do it safely.
Yep.
Wow. I think that's the threshold. I think once we have those experiences, though, they become quite, I don't want to say intoxicating because it's a different kind of high, but it becomes quite a high to go, wow, this intimacy this is the place where I thought I was going to get destroyed, and instead I find my gold.
Yeah.
And I'm with you, the person who I thought was going to hurt me the most.
Yeah. Who could?
And you're smiling.
Yeah.
You're smiling and we're laughing.
Yeah.
And we're feeling joy together. Oh my God, this is incredible.
Yeah.
How do I get more of that? Right?
Yeah. How do we get more of that?
Yeah.
I just have to stick with the Aikido thing. So I am not a martial artist. I have not. And the few lessons that I took in grappling and that kind of stuff, it's just popped into my head. Like, one of the most important things to learn very early on was how to disperse energy. So that that it didn't get hurt, right? When you roll and come over to the mat and whap onto the mat, disperse the energy.
Yeah. Yeah. You release it. You can't hold on to anything.
Yes.
Yeah. It builds up into tension in your body, and that's where you break. That's where the injury happens. Yeah. I think the other piece too, if you've done grappling or jujitsu, that kind of, those arts, when let's say you're being choked, that was my biggest fear. So I would actually act it out. I would get people to choke me. Okay, I'm terrified. Don't choke me. Okay, so then these big, huge guys with muscles, like grips that you couldn't break their grip, and they start choking me. And one of my training buddies, he was a triple black belt, and he knew how to choke you out to make you black out.
Yeah.
So that was the worst thing. I'm not only choked, but I'm gonna go unconscious. And he did it to me a couple times. And then the biggest lesson from that is the more you turn away, the faster you get choked. The more you turn towards, you start to find the openings. So even if someone's behind you in your blind spot, choking you, trying to snuff the life out of you, the more you try to get away, you're making their job easier. But the more you turn towards them, you suddenly find there's always mechanically an opening or two or three, right? You start to find their vulnerability. You find the ways to get out of that clinch. Every single time there's a way out. But you have to turn towards, which is counterintuitive, right? It's like, oh my God, this is terrible. I hate this person. They're killing me. I can't stand this. I want to get away. But when you turn towards, that's where you discover your power. And that's where you discover their vulnerability. Anyone who's trying to do us harm genuinely is extremely vulnerable. And they're exposing their vulnerability by attacking.
And turning toward them is often this, I mean, it's as somebody being attacked, right? It's also the thing most likely to deflate what's happening in the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it feeds off you wanting to be scared, right?
Yeah.
If I'm an attacker, I want to make you feel smaller and fearful. The more you stand with dignity, turn towards me and ground yourself.
Yeah.
Your fear dissipating.
Yeah.
The more I'm like, oh man, it's not worth it. You're going to be really hard. I'm going to go find someone weaker and more frightened So it often it even like sends people away, right? But it helps you, whatever comes at you, it helps you to deal with it
Yeah.
and disarm it. Yeah.
More family stories and more relational stories. So, and this, it goes along with that turning toward. So I found that I'm an adoptive dad, and there's a lot of stuff that I don't know about my kids, right? About what their early lives were like and what that's about. But I do know that they got beliefs that, right, fighting hard, yelling loud, pushing back would keep them safe. Getting really, really big, really angry would keep them safe.
Yeah.
And the turning toward in relationship to them has meant standing softly with that as a dad, standing present and softly with that as a dad. And then it's a question like, I imagine this feels really, really hard for you right now. That just fractures everything, right? That fractures the outside. And then and then what it is, it's the fear, it's the grief, it's the sadness, it's everything that's underneath this I'm going to keep you away from me attitude.
Wow. Boysen, that's so powerful. I call that the sword of truth or the scalpel of compassion, when you can kind of cut into the behavior with insight about, this makes sense why you're acting like this. Even if it's crazy, on a deep emotional level, it makes sense. You're protecting yourself. This is what you needed to do to survive. And to cut into that and then deal with the real thing.
Yeah.
The real thing is you're terrified, you feel ashamed, you feel scared, you feel hurt, grief struck. Then you can wrap your arms around that. Then you can deal with that. Then time can actually, and the relationship can heal.
Yeah.
That's profound. I'm really curious about, like, as an adoptive father, I have my own daughter and I've worked with a lot of kids in different family systems, but as an adoptive father, I imagine there's such a confluence of, like, you didn't cause any of this stuff. Because sometimes parents feel like, oh, how I raised them created this problem. It didn't come through you, but you're dealing with it. So when they're acting out, when they're going through their darkest moments, it's in your hands. I imagine you have to rely on your instincts and your heart intelligence, I call it, your compass, because you can't cognitively understand everything, where this comes from, right? And sometimes behavior is befuddling, right? People are just like, what the hell is going on with you? But you have a body instinct and an emotional intelligence that tells you, okay, I know what to do. I just need to ground and listen, or I need to cut into this a little bit. Has that been your experience?
That's absolutely my experience, and allowing myself also to sit in not knowing. Just not knowing, because I want to know. I want to fix it, right? Like, I want to heal it. I want to heal it, right? And it's not mine to heal. It's mine to witness. And so if I can be a clear enough channel to witness, then, that's winning. That's winning. And then all of those times that I have had the honor of witnessing tears, right? I've had the honor to see the tears are the work. The universe crying is the work of healing that kind of stuff. So, but it's also, what an incredible gift that I have, in that my kids, one of the gifts of that is that they see through everything. So, like, I literally can't be full of shit.
Yeah, you got to play at your A game.
Yeah, because they see it, right? And so, so for me, it's like times when I can just come to my kids and, like, I don't know what to do with this now. I know I feel angry. I know I feel scared. I know I feel whatever it is that's going on. I don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then just see that look in their eyes that's like, oh, okay. Like, you're not going to pretend. You're not going to get bigger. You're not going to make yourself scary. You're not going to like get mad because you don't know. You're just going to stand there and tell me you don't know.
Yeah.
There's something like safe. There's something safe in that.
Yeah. I'd say that that's a profound expression of real confidence. Core confidence is most of life is a mystery that we don't know. And if once we admit that, then we can ride the waves, right? And we can go with the current.
Yeah.
But to deny that is yeah, they get to an age where they can smell the bullshit.
Yeah.
And like that, it's not working.
So back to you and bringing us kind of full circle in the conversation. So from men's work at a very young age to becoming a therapist to building a men's work community to doing this work across gender in community, lay out a vision.
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Vision. ...
What? Lay out a vision for like, what's the most audacious thing that you can see for our culture right now with everything that's hard and everything that's beautiful?
Well, I have two visions that are pretty terrifying and exciting. Not terrifying, but they're too big for me to wrap my arms around, but I know they're coming to me, and they demand a lot of collaboration. The first one is, we call it something like a third space where men and women come together, probably couples, brothers and sisters, moms and sons, dads and daughters, but opposite gender, and also people who don't identify with either gender. But the game is, we've got shit with each other. We've got projections. We've got wounds. And we know that because we're fighting in our marriage. We know that because we don't talk to my parents or whatever, right?
Yes.
And I imagine a series of rituals, a space, a container where a community gathers with that intention to heal the wounds across the genders. And we go through a series of rituals where we see other men and women throwing out doing their shadow work. Not just me and my wife, but whoa, my God, I identify with that. Oh my, I can't believe she said that. I can't believe he said that. That what you described, that story of you and your wife, to witness that itself can be healing. To go, oh my God, that blows my brain that could happen in a relationship. That two people could get that close and that real with each other. But to lay out rituals where everyone can enter into that process, get what they need, and then go back to their lives nourished by that healing, and then keep coming back. Like, in the old days, we go to church, you sit there, you just receive a sermon, but more of an active ritual space for men and women to heal in relationship, in community, different than couples therapy So that's one vision. And we're doing a bunch of experiments with some seasoned elder men and women who've been in the game a long time are bringing their, the one for men that I have just for men particularly is, can we create cultures of men being there for each other in such a deep way that we can be bridging those divisions that are in our society between the left and the right wing, across race, across generational divides, financial too. Can we even get to a point where we're in community with men who are all very different than we are, and we might even consider getting into business with each other or owning property with each other? Can we get that clear in our relationships, that much trust, that we're rebuilding society from that culture? We're learning how to be that embedded with each other. That's one of the reasons why I'm leaving therapy, is therapy precludes me from having multiple relationships, right? I'm just like a priest in a cloister. You come to me and let's do this 1 hour. It can be really helpful, but it's a Band-Aid. When I work in community, I I can invite you over for dinner with my kid. You know, we can do stuff together. We can become lifelong friends. My wife might talk to your wife. We get embedded. It gets kind of like, oh no.
Oh no. Yeah.
But oh yes, because that's real accountability. If I start acting like a jerk, my wife is going to tell your wife, you're going to come over and be like, what the hell's wrong with you? Right? Like there can be like, what we're missing is village. And village is scary because we think it's communism or some weird cult or something. No, it's people living together in proximity, wanting to help each other grow and thrive. And we have a lot of messed up versions of that. We do have a lot of really bad versions of that, coercive and controlling systems, but there are healthy ones. There are healthy ones that have survived for thousands of years. Can we create that? Pockets of that then, if you're new to it, you enter into that pocket, you live in it for 5-10 years, then you know how to create more of that in your life. So when I'm dead, I helped feed that culture. My grandmother died a couple of years ago, and she had this spoon that she used to like run around and whack us with it. But she was very loving, right? She had this spoon, and I was cooking with it with my friend one day and on a call, and he's like, that spoon has her probiotics. The food that she used to grow on her land, that she used to cook for you as a little boy, is in that spoon. It's in that wood. So when you cook, you're continuing her culture on another continent, in another generation. That's really, that was a very concrete kind of example, but I think that's how it works generationally. Is we create a healthier culture in our families, in our brotherhood, then that extends, right? And that creates a pocket of health and resilience and strength that maybe has a chance of rebuilding the culture that's falling apart around us right now. Yeah.
David Jurasek, thank you for being here. Look for more information about David and his work in the show notes. And thank you, brother. May it be that this is a weird thing coming out of the Matrix, but may it be that we're all that spoon.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I know there's an indigenous saying in our part of the world, the dish and spoon. When you come to a new land, you bring a dish and spoon, you bring something and you receive something. That's my understanding of it, at least. And I think that's the culture that I want to keep building. Yeah. Thank you, Boysen. This has been really, really rich.
Thank you.
Love it.
This has been the Mankind Podcast, produced in association with the Mankind Project USA. And I personally want to thank our guests for joining us today and imparting their wisdom from their experiences in this amazing journey called life. Now, the fee for this episode is simple. If you found gold and insights that you believe could benefit your loved ones and those you care about, be sure to share it with them. And of course, remember that life doesn't happen to us. It happens for us, so long as we rip the pen out of fate's hand and become the author of our own story. So my friend, pick up the pen and we'll see you next week. Lots of love.